Hello girls, it's me, Miss O'Neill. Alright, so last lesson we were looking at landforms of erosion, so we looked at waterfalls and gorges. Today we're going to be looking at landforms of erosion and deposition. So on this page here you can see I've wrote out some statements, but I've jumbled up the order. What I would like you to do is read the statements and try and put them in the right order of sequence of how a waterfall forms. What I would like you to do is just write the number. You don't need to write the full sentence. It's only supposed to be a quick refresh from last lesson. Okay, so go. Okay, so what you should have found was that it goes 3, 5, 1, 4, 6, 2. So as the waterfall makes its way to the mouth of the river, it often flows over a variety of different rock types. You have more tougher resistant rock and you have less resistant rock as well. The water erodes the less resistant rock much faster than the harder resistant rock, which makes a little step. As the water flows over this waterfall or the step, it creates a deep and turbulent plunge pool. Okay, so that's the deep part just underneath where the ledge is. Here the process of erosion, particularly hydraulic action and abrasion, are active and they combine to undercut the waterfall. Undercut's the key word there. Eventually the overhanging rock collapses and the waterfall starts to retreat upstream, and then over many years this keeps on retreating back until it forms a gorge. And hopefully that diagram at the bottom on the previous slide explains what a gorge is a little bit more clearly. So those erosional landforms, waterfalls and gorges, are mostly found in the upper course of the river. Today we're looking at the middle course of the river, so the erosion and depositional landforms. The ones that you need to know are meanders and oxbow lakes. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Okay, so you're going to watch a video now on the formation of meanders and oxbow lakes. I did try and put the video into here, but it doesn't like to play at the same time properly as I'm recording. So whoever your cover teacher is, please would you be able to put that link in to, maybe by copy and paste, I don't know if it will work though, into the browser so that they can watch the video, and it starts how that one starts in the picture. Okay, so all I want you to do, girls, is watch the video and think about how meanders and oxbow lakes form. Okay, so what you should have seen from that video is that meanders are bends in the river, usually quite wide bends in the lowland areas of the river. They constantly change shape and position, and that is through lateral erosion. Lateral erosion is sideways erosion rather than vertical, which is what causes the waterfall. You should also note that the fastest flow in the river is called the thalweg. So on here, that is this bit here. So the blue line on the diagram is the thalweg. I love that word, by the way, it's really good. Anyway, so that's the fastest flow in the river. There are alternating pools and riffles. Pools are areas of deeper water. Riffles are where there are areas of shallower water because the sediment has built up. So for example, here you have a pool, that's a deeper area, and over here you have the riffles. So where on the diagram you've got like the little pebbles, that's the shallower section, and the pool is the deeper section. Okay, sorry, I'm not very good at writing on it. Alright, so as you get the pools and the riffles, the thalweg kind of twists between these, and that is usually what starts off the whole process of a meander. And it also creates this faster and slower pace of water. Now, because the Thalweg, the fastest flow of water, usually goes to the outside bend of a river, that is where the most erosion takes place. Okay, so on the outside bend of the river, you have more erosion because there's faster water. That's where the Thalweg is. Okay, so for example here where the pool is, so the pool is deep because that's where most of the erosion takes place. Now on the other side of the meander, here you have what's called a slip-off slope, and that's the inside bend of the meander. So in the inside bend, the water is much slower because the Thalweg is on the outside of the bend. The water in the inside is quite slow, and if you've got slower water that hasn't got as much energy, that means you're going to have more deposition rather than erosion. Okay, so that's what you need to remember. Outside bend, more erosion, faster water. Inside bend, slower water, more deposition. And that means because you've got more erosion on one side of the bend and more deposition on the other, you end up with this kind of shape of a meander. It's asymmetrical, so it's not the perfect channel you see here. It is much more to do with the diagram shown in B, because it's got the gentle slip-off slope on this inside bend here, and then a much deeper outside bend because of the more erosion. Okay. So over time, because you have this increased erosion on the outside bends, which is happening here, sometimes the loop can connect the bend, the Oxbow Lake, the meander neck it's called. Oh dear. So the meander neck gets more and more narrow because the outside bends are eroding, so they're closer and closer together, until eventually they touch, which is shown in diagram 2. Oh, what on earth is that? Sorry, I'm just going to get rid of it. Oh dear. You have to live with it, I'm afraid. So they get closer together. Eventually, usually during a flood event, the water will now take the fastest route, going all the way down here, rather than around the old meander. Now, because the old meander isn't being used anymore, the water is super slow, which means you're going to get more deposition happening here and here, which eventually seals it off until eventually it's one new straighter channel, which eventually might have more meanders come off of it, but you get left with this horseshoe shaped lake, which is called the Oxbow Lake. So what I would like you to do now, you've listened to those explanations, is answer question 1A and 2 on page 121 in the blue books which are in the office. So if you go and grab them, and I want you to have a go at answering them. If you want to write your own notes on meanders and Oxbow Lakes that aren't terrible drawings on the board, you can. Just use page 120 to make your own notes as well. I think question 1A and 2 actually kind of make notes without you needing that anyway, so if you just follow question 1A and 2, you'll get everything you need. Okay, so I thought we'd have a go now at an exam question. You should have these as copied or photocopies for you, so you can follow along. If you just listen to my explanations first, and then you can have a go at answering them on your own. So the first question here, study figure 15 on the insert. It's black and white copy, this one. So on figure 16, mark with an arrow and label 3 characteristics of the waterfall. Now these are quite common questions. They'll give you a photo and they'll ask you to label it. It's a 3-mark question, I didn't put the 3 marks on there, but it's 3 marks, which means it's point based. So all you need to do is label 3 things. If you want to label more than that, it's a good idea, because that way you cover all bases. So if one of them's wrong, you still have a chance of getting more marks. Okay, so all you need to do is mark with an arrow 3 characteristics of the waterfall. Now, characteristics are 3 characteristics are what it looks like. So some kind of description of the waterfall. Now, you can only talk about the waterfall here because it's not asking about the channel or the valley or the vegetation around it. You have to be specific about the waterfall. Now, this is the paper I actually marked and examined, and one thing that a lot of people picked up on was the fact that here you have harder rock. But we weren't allowed to award harder rock without this one being the softer rock. So can you see here you have along this bit here you've got a different kind of rock because the layers are going horizontal rather than these ones are going vertical. So you've got 2 different types of rock there. So another one you could put is softer rock. I've just remembered, I'm not going to answer these for you, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Alright. The other thing you've got here is kind of a step structure. So it comes down 1 step, and then down another step, and then down another step. Okay, so you could say that it's a stepped waterfall. Under here, you have some undercutting, and you can point to here to say plunge pool. Another thing you can say is that the waterfall seems to go off to the left at the top of the channel, and then you've got white water, and that kind of thing. Also seems to be inside a gorge here as well because it's very steep. Now, with these questions, you need to label 3. The arrow must touch what you're talking about. Now, if you're even a millimetre off where they think the plunge pool is, so for example, if you put the plunge pool pointing to about here, you wouldn't get the mark. It had to be directly underneath where the water touched the water, or the waterfall touched the water. Okay, so you must be very accurate with your arrows. I'm just going to talk you through the next question as well, and then you can have a go at that. Okay, so this one says explain the formation of a waterfall. First thing you do is highlight the command word, which is explain. So just highlight that. I don't like the way it's grey. I don't know how. Oh, there we go. I'm going to put it as yellow. Okay, so explain. Oh dear, it's all going wrong. Explain the formation of a waterfall. Now, it's a 4-mark question, so you have to here make sure it's a leveled, so you need to link your statements. It needs to be in sequence. So remember back to the starter at the beginning of the lesson. You can even rewind the video if you want and go back to that so that you've got some idea of what to write. All your statements need to be linked and in sequence, so no bullet points. Alright, this last question is an 8-mark question. It says describe, so there's no explaining needed, how river processes of transport and deposition. Notice they've not said anything about erosion, so you don't need to talk anything about erosion, just transport and deposition change downstream. So there has to be some kind of order and sequence that you talk about. So I would start with the, I'm going to change my pen. So I'm going to start with the upper course. Then I would go on to the middle, and then go on to the lower. Okay, so you're talking downstream, you're actually putting it into downstream in your answer. And it says describe how the processes of transport. Now transport, remember you have 4 processes of transport. You have traction, saltation, solution and suspension. Deposition, you can just talk about what kind of sediment is deposited. So in the upper course it's going to be the big boulders. In the middle course it will be the smaller rocks but pebbles, and in the lower course it's going to be sand. Okay, and you're going to have more deposition as you go down into the lower course. Okay, be careful, do not talk about erosion, and do it in sequence. Remember, linked statements, maybe have 3 little paragraphs for upper course, middle course, and then lower course. I want you to have a go at completing those questions now, please. Okay, so if you've finished all of the exam questions, you've done your notes on meanders and oxbow lakes, and you're happy with them, what I would like you to do is make a revision resource. So you can do a poster, a mind map, or some flashcards, or however else you best revise. You could do a quiz or something on river landforms discussed so far. So waterfalls, gorges, meanders, and oxbow lakes. You could make it on one big mind map or one big poster, or you could have like separate little flashcards for each landform. It's completely up to you. And that's all for this double lesson. And then I'm doing another one, hope you don't mind, for next lesson as well. Okay? Have a good day.